Welcome to Therapy in the Great Outdoors, a podcast about the business and practice of nature-based pediatric therapy of all kinds. If you are a nature-loving therapist who works with children, this podcast will help you start taking your work outdoors into nature and help you grow a profitable nature-based therapy practice or program that connects children to nature and changes their lives and yours forever. I'm your host, the ever honest, always 100% real, Laura Park Figueroa. I have been a pediatric occupational therapist for over 20 years. But 7 years ago, I almost left the field entirely. I was so burned out. And nature-based therapy is what saved me. It reignited my love of my work, and I saw profound changes in the children that I was working with. I'm the founder of Outdoor Kids OT and the creator of the TGO approach, an evidence-based framework for nature-based pediatric therapy services. I've helped dozens of pediatric therapists start and grow successful nature-based practices through my business coaching and online programs, the latest of which is the Therapy in the Great Outdoors community, TGO for short. TGO is an online membership site with loads of resources to support you every step of the way as you start and grow your nature-based therapy work. You can find out more at therapyinthegreatoutdoors.com. Working outdoors with children can be a wild ride. Are you ready for the adventure? Let's jump in. Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2 of Therapy in the Great Outdoors. On this episode, I am going to share with you the 4 stages of nature-based practice and mistakes that you can avoid because I've made them for you and you can learn from my mistakes. This is me pulling back the veil, being honest with you about the things that have gone wrong or been hard in my business. And I will share with you mistakes to avoid as well as what to focus on in each stage of starting or growing your nature-based practice. But before we dive into that content, I want to introduce something that I hope will be a regular practice here on the show at the beginning of every show. I'm going to start doing a 2-minute takeaway from the evidence. So what this will be is me choosing a piece of evidence, either a research article or maybe a chapter from a book or something that I find that can support our work as nature-based pediatric therapists, and share with you a brief overview and a 2-minute takeaway that you can apply to your practice just to empower you with the evidence in a way that's easy and quick for you so that you're not having to pore over a bunch of literature in your spare time. Or you can choose to do that if you would like to look up the resource, right? So this first 2-minute takeaway that I'm going to do, and again, I'm going to try to keep it to 2 minutes. I do time myself on these before I start recording the podcast, so I know that this one is roughly 2 minutes. Sometimes there'll be 3 maybe, but 3-minute takeaway didn't sound as good as 2-minute takeaway. So it will be called the 2-minute takeaway. It will be a brief, short thing. So for this first 2-minute takeaway, I'm going to share with you the findings of an article in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health from 2021. It's an article by Harper, Fernee and Gabrielsen, and the title of the article is Nature's Role in Outdoor Therapies, an Umbrella Review. So in this article, they were reviewing meta-analyses and systematic reviews in order to look at what the evidence said about what is the mechanism of change in nature-based therapies. So essentially the how and why of change that happens when we do therapy outdoors. And the findings were that they did not have clear descriptions of treatment in many of the articles. So they reviewed 14 studies. Only 2 of them had children. So most of them were youth, like teenagers and adults. But 14 studies were reviewed, only 2 with children. But the articles did not, these systematic reviews and meta-analyses of the research did not clearly describe the treatment. They didn't clearly describe what was going on, what theories they were using, what they were doing in the treatment session, describing the setting that they were providing the therapy service in. So the researchers of this umbrella review determined that it's really complex, right? The work we do as nature-based therapists is very complex. They did mention the role and potential need of a trained facilitator as linked to some of the outcomes in some of these studies. So that was an interesting thing that relates to our work, right? Because we are skilled professionals in our fields. Whatever profession you are in, you are a skilled professional. And so maybe your role is very important in the process of getting outcomes in therapy when we're doing therapy outdoors in nature. So the final recommendations in this article were that we need to develop operational frameworks and theories to guide practice and future research, and that we should be doing interdisciplinary collaboration. So they weren't able to identify exactly what nature's contribution to the therapy process was, but they did mention that future research is needed, of course. That's what all studies say, right? Another interesting thing was that they mentioned that randomized controlled trials are not often appropriate for measuring the work we do as nature-based therapeutic practitioners. And they have a large list of a variety of different studies that they would recommend in order to guide future research. So the takeaway here, I think this is over 2 minutes, but I'm going to proceed. The takeaway here is use a theory or framework to guide your nature-based practice. This is not important just in research. This is important in explaining what you do to families. This is important in helping guide your clinical reasoning when you are working with children outdoors. So use a theory or framework to guide your nature-based treatment. Now, some of you may know that I teach a nature-based therapeutic framework called the TGO approach, the Connection and Transformation in the Great Outdoors approach. And that approach is specifically designed as a framework for any pediatric therapist to take their work with children outdoors into nature. That framework was developed around the lived experience of doing nature-based therapy, as well as the research and evidence that I reviewed in my PhD coursework and in the research I'm currently doing as a PhD candidate. And also the skills that therapists need, the practical outdoor skills that therapists need to take their work outdoors with children. So if you are interested in that, go to therapyinthegreatoutdoors.com. You can click on course at the top there in the menu, and you will find out all about the TGO approach training to get on the wait list for when enrollment opens. Again, it's a really great framework to help organize our thinking around the work that we do as pediatric therapists, and it has been influenced by a number of years of practical experience and research behind it to help you practice in an evidence-based way when you take your work outdoors with children. So loads of support there for you in that course. If you are interested, you can check it out, therapyinthegreatoutdoors.com. You can also find it under contigoapproach.com, but I'm trying to direct everyone to the therapyinthegreatoutdoors.com website in order to make that the central hub for all of our resources to support your work with children in nature. Moving on to the content for today. So I'm looking at the time here, and that was probably more like a 5-minute review, but 2-minute takeaway. 2-minute takeaway. Maybe the 2-minute takeaway will be the 2 minutes that I talk about the takeaways to apply to our practice. So, okay, moving on, we are going to talk about the 4 stages of nature-based practice. And before we get started, I want to assure you again, like I said on the first episode, that when I talk about nature-based practice, I will be using that to refer to any nature-based business, program, or service throughout this episode. These stages that I'm going to talk about are applicable to building a business or to starting a program or a new service in an existing practice setting that you may be working in. So I will say that starting a new business may require more time in each stage. If you would like a downloadable of all of these stages, I wrote an 8-page ebook that has all of this content in it so you don't have to frantically take notes. Just go to, you guessed it, therapyinthegreatoutdoors.com. Right on the top in the toolbar, click Nature-Based Practice Roadmap, and you can download the 8-page ebook. You can join my email list, and then you'll get helpful information to your inbox about nature-based practice as well. And as always, you can always unsubscribe. I never want to spam people ever, ever. I hope my emails are helpful to you all. So, nature-based practice. What is the first phase or stage, as I call them in the roadmap. I realized I'm looking at it right now. So in this stage, you are planning. And I imagine that many of you listening to this podcast might be in this stage. I know that a lot of people join the Therapy in the Great Outdoors community, and our previous Facebook group that we had, many people are interested in nature-based practice. But I think this is the longest stage for most people, honestly, the planning stage, where you really have to figure out get all your ducks in a row, to use a nature-based metaphor, to be able to offer an effective service. And the first thing that you need to do in the planning stage is to focus on market research, knowing what your market is like, and also getting all of your legal things done. So, the business license and all of those things. So in the ebook, I have a lot of advice to you and more content than I will cover in this podcast. So go ahead and download that if you want to get more info than this. But market research basically means that you are looking around in your community, and thanks to the internet, you can do all of this from the comfort of your own home with a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, and look for what is currently being offered in your area. Are there nature-based camps? Are there therapeutic camps? Are other therapists doing outdoor services? What's going on in your local community? And see what these other organizations are offering. What are they charging? Where are they located? When are their services taking place? All of that. Look up all that information and maybe keep it in a spreadsheet or a Google Doc for ease of reference for you, and try to find what you could offer that is unique, that is not being met currently in your area. Once you've done that and you kind of have an idea of what you want to do, then you need to do all of that legal stuff, getting your licenses, getting waivers written, all of the legal things. There's too many to go into detail. Maybe that's a whole podcast episode I could do later. Legal stuff for nature-based practice. But basically, I give some resources of the Small Business Administration as well as NOLO Press, NOLO Press. Their website is nolo.com. That is a legal book website, and the Small Business Administration website is great in the US. Now, if you're in another country, you can find the equivalent organizations in your country. So the common mistakes in this stage. When you are getting started, it is very easy to let mindset completely derail you. You'll feel intimidated. I've talked about this on previous lives and podcasts that I have done in the past, that when we are getting started on something, that is the time that we are most prone to self-doubt, because we don't have the proven experience behind us to know that we can do it, right? So spend time with people who believe in you, and make sure that you focus on your mindset and you notice your mindset when you are delving into the pit of despair, and get around those people who can really lift you up and believe in you. If you haven't read Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, that's a great book to read. All about growth mindset and keeping a growth mindset, knowing that you are learning and that mistakes are a part of learning. Okay, the second mistake in this stage is you basically just are too busy to get real traction in your practice. So many people say, when I ask them what's holding them back from getting started in nature-based work with kids, it's that they're too busy. They're working a full-time job. You might be working a full-time job and trying to start this on the side. And so knowing that at the beginning, it is going to take work. It is going to take time to achieve your dreams, to do the things that you really want to do. And so taking those small steps make great gains over time. I say that all the time. I will continue to say it forever, because it helps me when I get overwhelmed to just know to take small steps towards the goals that I have. So knowing that you need to set aside time is important in this stage as well. Let's move on to stage 2, or phase 2. Start. Now, this is where you will actually get started providing the service. But the first thing you have to do in this stage is marketing, to let people know what you're doing, right? What services are you going to be providing in your community, and who needs to know about those services? So in the ebook, I talk about several ways that you can do this. Some of them are having a physical flyer that you leave on bulletin boards in local businesses where your ideal client may be hanging out. You can connect with other professionals in your community who might be able to refer children to you, or feel great about referring kids to you because they're helping the client. So an example might be, just yesterday, actually, I just moved to the Midwest after living in California for 14 years. So we've been here about a year now. And I have not started my therapy practice here yet. I'm still running my practice in California from Wisconsin. And I haven't started my practice here because the state of Wisconsin is so behind on OT licenses that I applied 5 months ago. I was hoping to start seeing kids this fall, and I don't think it's going to happen. I still don't have my license approved by the state. So I am in a waiting game right now. But one of the things that is interesting to me is I am right now going through this process again, even though I have a very successful nature-based practice and I have all this support that I give to therapists online. So I'm running these 2 businesses, right? But I'm going to start a practice here in Wisconsin. So I, like many of you, am in this planning and start phase right now with my business here in Wisconsin to start a practice here. So it's interesting. So just yesterday, I met someone who is the director at a preschool. And she doesn't know what I do yet, and I didn't launch immediately into what I do, but I am going to put her name on a list on my Trello board. I love Trello, project management app. If you don't know what Trello is, go look it up, Trello, super easy to use. I love it. I use it in my business all the time. And I'm going to put her name in my Trello board for planning to open my practice here in Madison, because she's a great contact to have, to know, like, could I come and do an in-service for her staff? Could I service families at her preschool somehow to do an in-service for them? Like, I don't know. There could be opportunities there. So just building those authentic relationships with other local professionals who you might be able to help their clientele and help them as well. So that's just an idea, just something that came up in my own life. And then there's many other things you can do that are listed in the ebook, but I'll keep it here for the podcast because I don't want this to be too long. I want this to be quick and easy for you to get content in this podcast. So the second part of phase 2 of nature-based practice is to deliver your high-quality services. So you really will need a good intake process, like your intake forms, payment processing, and assessment processes. You want to have those things established before you're getting those clients coming to you, and then you'll be scrambling to do your intake procedures. So you want to have all those established in this phase, that's kind of stage 1, actually, but then be able to deliver effective treatment sessions. And you'll want ongoing documentation, processes, and ways to communicate progress to your clients. So if you are currently delivering services, it's interesting. It might be helpful to you to think through some of these too and do some analysis of your intake forms, your payment processing. Does anything need to change if you're already delivering services? I know right now in my practice, we are building software within Therabyte, which is our EMR. I love them. And I am in the process with the owners of the business to make a group registration software, essentially, that will easily help us do intake and form groups that are effective and that work really well for therapy groups. So that is something I'm sure I'll be talking more about that on the podcast, but that's an example of how even when you are running a practice, you might move back and forth between these stages sometimes at different phases of your business. Because right now I'm really focusing on up-leveling the system so that the business can grow. I want to talk about common mistakes, but that will take us into the next stage, which is manage. So I kind of moved forward in my discussion of the stages here. But okay, common mistakes here, not using a specific treatment approach to guide your practice. So this is one of the reasons why I chose that article to talk about in the 2-minute takeaway, is because this was one of the mistakes people make. And when there's something to be said for just trying things out, right? And experimenting. And I did that when I first started. I was experimenting. I straight up told a couple of my clients, I am experimenting with outdoor work. I don't do what I did. Okay. This is one of the mistakes in this stage too, is charging too little, not paying yourself. I charged people $40 for a 2-hour OT session. And this was just an illustration of how I didn't see the value in it right away. Like, I was worried that I wasn't going to be providing value. I don't want you to do that. I want you to charge at least, okay to charge a starting rate just to give yourself freedom, but pay yourself. Make sure that you pay yourself and that you charge enough to be able to pay yourself and cover your expenses. So, when I first started out, I was kind of experimenting, trying things out. But I tell people all the time, like, know the theory and evidence before you go out there, and you'll just save so much time. Your treatment will be so much more effective. So mistakes in this stage, again, I got a little distracted and felt like I was rambling here. Sorry. Common mistakes in this stage, not using a specific treatment approach. So pick a theory or a framework that you are going to use to guide your practice in this stage. And then the second is not paying yourself. So make sure that you charge enough to be able to pay yourself, even if it is a small amount to start out. You have to be able to pay your expenses to be sustainable for the long haul with any practice or program, even if you're a nonprofit. I'm hoping to bring on someone to talk about nonprofits in the future, but even as a nonprofit, you still have to be able to meet your expenses. So please, please, please make sure to charge enough to cover your expenses. All right, stage 3. Manage your business. In this stage, you're going to focus on creating repeatable systems and outsourcing to other people. So I kind of spoke about this a little bit, and you'll see these are not always like perfectly distinct stages, but it's just a general guide for helping you think through the different stages you'll go through as you create a practice or program. In this stage, you are going to be creating systems, and this is an ongoing process. As your business grows, you're going to need new systems like I just talked about. But when you create systems, this means there is a standard operating procedure, or SOP in business speak, for every single thing that is a repeated process in your practice. Now, this is my bread and butter. I love creating systems. I love helping clients create systems in their practices. This is what my whole Business Bedrocks program was set up to teach people, was how do you create systems in your business? Business Bedrocks, as I mentioned on the first episode, will be available inside of the Therapy in the Great Outdoors community in the near future. Maybe if you're listening to this in the future, it may already be available. Join the Therapy in the Great Outdoors community. There's a free area that you can join, but the Business Bedrocks program will be included in the business area, which will be a paid business coaching area of the community that you can join. So if you're interested in this, this is what my program does. This is the stage that my program helps people in, is this creating systems, managing the business. So you need those standard operating procedures in order to help the business run smoothly without you doing everything in the business. And that leads us into outsourcing. I think this is one of the most challenging things that I have experienced and that other nature-based pediatric therapists have experienced in my work with them, is the intense love we feel of our work and the way that we cling to the things that we think only we can do, when really we as the business owner or as the program manager need to be able to do the higher level tasks to guide the business or the program. And we need to outsource the things that would free up our time, things that we may not be as good at doing as someone else might be that we could outsource to. So, or maybe just things we really dislike doing. So outsourcing bookkeeping, admin tasks, and billing are things that I think every nature-based pediatric therapist should be outsourcing as soon as possible in your business. Unless you were a bookkeeper before you started your business as a therapist, and before you went into the therapy profession, like, please let someone else do your books. Please let someone else do the admin tasks, do the billing, all of those things. Your time is better spent either providing direct therapy services to bring more income into the business, or spent managing people who are helping you bring more revenue into the business. So in this stage is commonly where people start hiring employees as well. That's a method of outsourcing, right? Your business cannot grow. You have limited time in your business. So I want us to be thinking as nature-based pediatric therapists about growing our practices by learning new skills to be able to manage people, outsource things, because you're not going to grow beyond yourself. You have limited time. You are one person. You cannot serve. You're bound by time on how many clients you can serve. If you want to have greater impact in your community, then you have to think about outsourcing things. You have to let go and let other people do some of the work in your practice or your program. Common mistakes in this stage are waiting too long to outsource. So an example of this for me is that I actually have been in practice for my business has been in business. I've been in practice for 20 plus years, but my business has been in existence for just over 6 now. We're entering our 7th year. So I waited way too long to outsource things. So I got really overwhelmed really early on in the business, almost quit about 2 years, I want to say, into the business. And I think that was a symptom of not outsourcing when I needed to. I also waited way too long to hire my first full-time employee. I'm doing that this year. I've had very part-time hourly employees all the way to this point, and we have a very long wait list now, and I really am excited about the potential. I'm hiring someone full-time right now. She just accepted the position. I'm very excited. If you're listening, I'm very thankful for you. And I'm really excited for her to join our team. And this is an example, though, of me being a little fearful of outsourcing and handing over that much work to someone. So I want you to lean into the discomfort and know that you can proceed even when you're a little afraid, and that outsourcing is the only way that you can grow your business beyond yourself. The second mistake in this stage is that we are constantly reinventing the wheel. So in this stage, when you are in this managing phase and you're learning how to manage your business and you're getting those standard operating procedures down and you're starting to outsource tasks, the tendency is to start to add a lot of other services or products or revenue streams. Don't do it. Don't do it. Also learned this mistake very early on. I tried to hire someone to run like a toddler playgroup program. We had just barely gotten our therapy groups like up and running. We'd been in existence for about a year. And, we just had no one register for the toddler groups. And so that's an example of I didn't really do market research. I was like trying to too early start a new service when people didn't even know the first service that we were offering. So if it isn't broke, do not fix it. So if you are offering a service and you're outsourcing and starting to hire people, maybe just keep doing that service for a bit and then get known for doing one thing and doing it extremely well. That's the fastest path to success and the fastest path to having massive impact in your community and financial stability in your practice is to be referable. When people know what you do, they refer people to you. So when you want to add new revenue streams, that is when you can enter stage 4, and you are then in the growth stage. So once you have standard operating procedures, you have a team, your marketing is bringing in new clients, and your practice is running smoothly, you enter the final phase, which is grow. And in this stage, you are focusing on leadership and diversifying revenue streams. So you are stepping into leadership and you are learning how to be a better leader of the team and the people that you are managing. This is a whole new phase of business. I feel like in this stage, it is so important that you have mentors, coaches, a community around you to help you be confident making decisions in the face of really complex situations that naturally arise when you are growing your practice. And to be honest, I have felt alone many times as I've entered this phase, and I have had to seek out mentors, business friends, people to help me behind the scenes. And I've paid for a lot of coaching because it's really challenging when you are balancing the needs of a team, the needs of your clients, your own boundaries around your own life, and just having a life as you're running your practice or program. So I think it's really important in this stage I would recommend personally, not being afraid to invest especially at this stage. I mean, I think it's important to invest in coaching all the time, but not being afraid at this stage to invest in being part of a community where you can get that support that will help you when those mindset issues crop up in reaching new heights as a leader in your business and growing your business beyond just you and maybe a small team. This is also the stage at which you can wisely start to diversify revenue streams. So you kind of have those systems in place. And now is the time for developing new programs or services or products or serving different clientele. Maybe you decide to serve a different age group, and that will involve new systems and require ongoing management. So you'll kind of cycle, like I mentioned earlier, cycle back to some of those earlier stages, because when you're developing a new program or service, you're moving back into the planning stage. So I'm just realizing now that maybe I need to reconceptualize the visual that I have in the ebook, because it's kind of an ongoing cycle in business. These are not one and done stages where you finish the first one and you're never there again. Like I mentioned, like I'm back in the planning stage to start a new practice in a different location. All right, common mistakes in this final stage are taking back tasks that you previously delegated to other people. So sometimes what happens in a business is that your business grows and you notice that other people are getting a little stressed with what they are doing in the business. And so you take on some of the things that you used to have someone else doing. And so that is a clear indicator that it's time to hire someone else. So an example of this is in my practice currently, I just hired another admin support person because my administrative assistant / executive assistant / business strategist extraordinaire, Nicole Storms, who I love, she has moved more into a strategic role in the business and helping me make some higher level business decisions. And we needed more support for the admin pieces of the business. And so that is a clear example. And that was, I noticed that she was getting overwhelmed, right, with what she had going on. And then I ended up taking things back. And then I realized, wait, why am I doing these things? I need to find someone else to do these. So yeah, so it's just an example. In every stage of business, you'll have mistakes that you make, and then you'll learn from them. So don't take back the tasks that you previously delegated to others. See that as an opportunity to then grow your team a little bit more, making sure that you can do that financially. That's important to have systems around finances too. That's another topic for a whole other episode. I'm coming up with so many ideas for episodes while talking about this. The second common mistake in this stage is feeling like you can't afford to invest in coaching or mentoring. So I mentioned this earlier that I feel like it's really important in this stage to work with a coach. If you work with a good coach, you should get far more value in your practice or your program than the money you pay to that coach. So an example is if you're paying $500 a month for a program, let's just say this is like a nice even number. Let's say you're paying $500 a month for the program. If you get one client as a result of that who is paying you weekly $125, you've made back your money. And the other thing too I like to think about with coaching is the transformation internally for you. Like you can't really put a money value on that. That's very hard to say that was worth X number of dollars that I had this mindset shift and became more confident in leading my business or in providing nature-based services. Like you can't accurately put a dollar amount on something like that, right? The other thing is I love to use nature metaphors in my work and my business. If you follow me on Instagram, you may have seen that I do these reels called Business Lessons from Nature. So I just love these nature metaphors that I think of about business. And it's the same here. So no one is an island, okay? None of us, when we run these practices, none of us are an island. None of us can do this on our own. None of us have done this on our own. We're actually more like a grove of aspen trees. So if you know anything about aspen trees, one, they're beautiful. They were filled, this valley where I lived for 2 summers right out of college in Colorado. I guided backpacking trips, and the valley was just covered in aspen trees. They're so beautiful. They're, bright yellow and have these white branches with kind of gray lines through them. Just so beautiful, covering the mountain. And aspen trees actually have a shared root system. So even though they look like individual trees on the surface, they actually have this massive shared root system. And that is how I think of us as nature-based pediatric practices. We are all interconnected. We are all on this mission to connect more kids and families to nature. And every single person that is running a nature-based practice is successful because of their support network of other people. So we are a grove of aspen trees. And when you invest in coaching or mentoring, you are tapping into that community of people that can support you and help you not feel like a crazy person when you're running your business. So I highly recommend to you all, it is the best thing you can do for yourself, your team, and your practice to invest in mentoring, coaching, business support in a community of people. So that is something I highly recommend. Now, that's it. The stages are plan, start, manage, and grow. And again, you cycle through these stages in every different new thing that comes up in your business. Remember, if you want a summary of all of this information plus a little bit more content, you can go to therapyinthegreatoutdoors.com and download the 8-page ebook. Just click on Nature-Based Practice Roadmap in the top toolbar. Whatever stage of nature-based practice you are in, we are here to support you in the Therapy in the Great Outdoors community. I spend time there every week along with over 20 mentors who are currently doing nature-based work with children who are there to support you in your work. So come on over and join us, and I will see you inside. Thank you so much for spending time with me today, exploring therapy in the great outdoors. If you liked what you heard in this episode, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes so we can share the magic of nature-based therapy with a wider audience of therapists who work with children who desperately need connection to nature nowadays, just like we do. If you're ready to take the next step in this adventure, join our free Therapy in the Great Outdoors community at therapyinthegreatoutdoors.com. The TGO community is a private space just for nature-based pediatric practitioners. We have loads of resources there to support you as you start or grow a nature-based practice or program. Our free TGO community has a discussion forum, a jobs and volunteers board, a crowdsourced treatment activities section, as well as free video trainings, research article reviews, and book recommendations from yours truly. Head on over to therapyinthegreatoutdoors.com to join today. So until next time, get outside, connect, reflect, and enjoy the business and practice of therapy in the great outdoors.